Okay, guys, picking up where we left off. So, you've done your 3 mortises. Now it's time to figure out time of death. Well, what if you need more information? What if you can't figure it out from those 3 things? You also have 2 other options, and that is to look at the ocular fluid. That is your eyeball. Okay, so this will only be available on dead victims, not living victims of crimes. So you can actually take a look at the ocular fluid and see how much potassium is in your eyeball. So during your lifetime, that level of potassium stays pretty constant based on the foods that you eat and things like that. Once you're dead, that level of potassium sort of drops off over time, so they can measure that and figure out, okay, well, approximately how long has this person been dead based on how much potassium is left in that fluid. It's called the vitreous humor. That's the fancy name for it. And then we can also look at the stomach contents. The stomach contents, might give us an idea of approximately when the person died based on not only what they ate, but how digested that material is. So, if their stomach is full of, practically undigested eggs and bacon, they probably died right after breakfast. If they're full of steak and potatoes, but it's pretty broken down, maybe it was a few hours after dinner. So you can kind of narrow it down from that as well. All right. Now, these are 2 definitions. We're going to talk about both of these in much more detail probably on Monday when we come back to school. So forensic anthropology is looking at skeletal remains. So, not a whole lot left to do with the autopsy if you don't have any flesh left over. But you can still do an autopsy on a skeleton. It's kind of crazy. It's just a different kind of process. So this is the process by which we figure out not only who the skeletal victim is, but also how long ago they died and maybe what they died from. Okay, it's usually the who that we're interested in. And then forensic entomology is the process of using insects to determine time of death. So we can also do that as well. We're going to go into a lot of detail about that when we get to this topic, which is what I call 1.9. So whenever we get to 1.9, we'll cover both of these. But I wanted you to go ahead and have these definitions. Okay, so the next part of the notes is just all pictures. There's nothing to write down. It's just a bunch of things I'm going to show you that are involved in autopsy and kind of explain along the way. All right. Nothing too gross, I promise. Okay, so this is the sort of the autopsy, not where you would perform the autopsy, but where you would keep the body before performing the autopsy. On TV, a lot of times this is like a drawer that they kind of insert people in more vertically than horizontally, but they do come in this horizontal type flavor as well. So that's just what they look like. It's like a refrigerator. Okay, what warrants an autopsy? Any kind of death that is questionable. Right? So the coroner says, we're not sure. Maybe there's some foul play going on, right? So, of course, homicides. We always investigate drownings because sometimes things look like drowning, but if there's no water in the lungs, maybe it was like a suffocation instead, right? So it can kind of look like something on the outside. We're not sure. Auto accidents, most of the time are going to trigger an autopsy as well, just to make sure that the person that, maybe caused the accident, were they drunk? Did they have a medical problem? Or did they just not pay attention, right? And then any death of a child. So again, I will tell you to go ahead and investigate Douglas County recently as well, dealing with deaths of children and our lovely coroner. Okay, so this is the needle that they use to collect the vitreous humor, which again is where? Eye fluid. Okay, pretty gruesome. More needles, more syringes to get all sorts of other fluids, so blood perhaps from inside of the heart, which can sometimes be a little bit different than blood that you might find in a vein or an artery. Okay, so why do we do autopsies? All right, we want to find the cause of death, right? We want to be able to solve criminal cases properly, appropriately, give the family peace of mind so they know what it is that actually caused the death of their family member. Sometimes we find that genetic diseases have been kind of underlying in the person's lifetime for a long time and they didn't know. So anytime, like, let's say a very young athlete drops dead in the middle of the practice field, we're going to do an autopsy. And a lot of times what you're going to find is that they had a heart condition that they had absolutely no idea that they had. And unfortunately, that's what led to their death. Insurance claims, right? So if we're dealing with people who have taken large sums of insurance out on their spouses, and they want to know, was it homicide? Was it suicide? Was it natural death? What happened, right? Like wives that poison their husbands for $400,000, right? And then, of course, medical advancement, which is going to be, as we build knowledge about ways that people die, maybe there's something that we can add to the medical literature to prevent people from killing each other in these ways, right? So that acetylcholine that we talked about back with the Coppolino case, the perfect example of that. That's adding to the medical knowledge. All right, so we're also going to take an x-ray during autopsy, and this is something that's very much overlooked in TV and movie shows about medical examiners and coroners. They never show them x-raying the body. Sometimes they have to look for things like broken bones, healed previous injuries, like, you wouldn't see this under the skin, but of course they have some screws in their leg there. And then here's some from a person that had apparently at some point a broken pelvis. You can see the pelvis down here as well. All right, this is the table that they perform the autopsies on. As you can see, it's pretty much a flat table. There's a tray that kind of slides to help lift up, or you can place your instruments on it if you slide it all the way out of the way. The sink at the end helps with cleanup. Of course, this is the scale that they weigh the organs in. This is just another view of it from the other side. And you can see how it's angled to contain blood and other, fluids. You're going to be looking for trace evidence on mainly the hands and the faces of the people that are involved, because a lot of the other parts of the body are, of course, covered with clothing. So you're going to be looking underneath the fingernails. You're going to be looking for, anything that could be there. It could be blood and hair and skin cells, stuff like that. You're going to be looking for injuries, of course. Mistreatment would indicate, maybe the person was tortured, for information or something. Maybe they have burn marks on them. Maybe they have ligature marks from being tied up. You're going to look for signs of disease. So it could be that the person, appears to be, beaten with all sorts of bruises, but really those bruises are caused by an illness rather than the force of impact from some object. Here's some types of injuries that you might encounter at autopsy. Here's some scrapes right here. This person, I'm not sure what happened here. They either stepped on something or perhaps they were burned. Like I mentioned, it could be like somebody took a cigar and tortured this guy, burned the bottom of his foot to get him to say something. I don't know. This is the body block. It's pretty self-explanatory. You can put it up underneath the head, the arm, the leg. It just holds up parts of the body or keeps them stable when you're performing different parts of the autopsy. So here's the autopsy itself. You're going to start with a Y-shaped incision where you kind of start at your shoulders and you go down to the middle of the breastplate and then straight down from there down to the belly button, essentially the pubic region. And it's a deep incision because you have to get all the way through the skin. People that are very skinny have skinny skin, and people that are a little bit bigger have thicker skin, so you have to cut all the way down into, all the layers of skin and fat and musculature that's in the way until you get down to the bone on the breastplate area. And then once you get into the area underneath the breastplate, then, it's all organs from this point down. There's no bones in the way, so to speak. So here it is, kind of showing you as you pull away on that Y incision, you'll have the flaps that open out to either side, and then the flap at the top kind of gets pushed up over the person's neck and chin area. And that allows you to get in there and take the chest plate out. So you're going to extract the chest plate, and that's where you're going to get to all of the internal organs. You usually start with the heart, okay? Keep forgetting to move myself, sorry. So when you take the organs out, you can either do one at a time, or you can take them all out and then, look at the organs one at a time. That's called the Rutikansky method. And then once you have removed each organ, you're going to weigh it, measure it. Sometimes people have organs that are super enlarged, and that can tell you like the cause of death, right? Because it could be that they just, had some strange issues internally that they may not have even been aware of. It's examined for texture and color, and then a lot of times they'll slice it into real thin sections, and that's to go under the microscope and look at the cells of the tissue itself. And then they're going to, take samples for not only the microscopic analysis, but also they're going to run some tox analysis, right? Some toxicology stuff to figure out if there's any poisons or toxins present. Here's some of the jars that they put the items in. They're all labeled there so you can see what they're for. Bile comes out of the liver. It's a fluid that comes from the liver. They come in all sorts of sizes, depending on what you might need to put in there. Running the gut. You can use your imagination here. Basically, the hose goes in one end and comes out the other, right? So it sort of takes all of the contents out, all right? Now, if you're ready to take the brain out, you're going to do it in this way. You're going to kind of start at the top of the back of your head and make an incision down towards your ears, all right? So imagine the ears are right there at the end of that. That's going to allow you to kind of peel back the top of the person's head. Sorry, guys. And take a look at the skull itself, right? So the skull, remember, is what, protects your brain, not just your skin. So then, of course, the skull has to come out of the way to be able to get to the brain. So to remove the skull itself, you have two methods. You can either kind of cut sort of the area that's been exposed once you peel it back. You can make a little notch if you want to make sure you get it back in the right spot. Once the skull cap is out of the way, then you can actually go in and take the brain out. In order to do that, you do have to free it from the spinal cord. So you kind of put your scalpel up underneath there and slice it out, and then the brain is removed. Now, the brain has the consistency of not quite set Jell-O. So it's actually kind of softer than you might think. People think of organs as being the solid mass, like a liver, right? I know you've seen a liver at the grocery store sitting there next to steaks and stuff. It's not really the same sort of thing. It doesn't have that consistency, so it has to be stiffened up, and they put it in formaldehyde or some other, solution to preserve it for about a week before they ever get around to the slicing for microscopic analysis. It's weird. All right, so you're all done. You've examined all your organs. It's time to close up the body. So the skull cap is put back on. The skin is pulled back into place. Sometimes the organs are put back in, right? Once they have their samples, they don't really need the rest of the organ. Other times they're left out and the body is just filled up with like newspaper. I know that sounds really bad, but you have to fill it up with something, because if the body belongs to a family that wants an open casket funeral, you don't want their chest cavity all caved in for the funeral. So they'd have to fill it up with something. And then there is this baseball stitch that they use to close it up. Now, if and when we ever get to do our banana autopsy, you will be doing this stitch yourself. So I will show you exactly how it works. But basically, you just kind of stitch it together to get the parts of the skin to come back together. And then the stitch just holds it all in place. That's it. So guys, you have a fun sheet to do today. Let me go to where we are. And that's going to be right here, autopsy fun sheet. If you have printing capabilities, you can do that. If you cannot print, I've made a digital version for you right here so you can see that. And then that's pretty much it, because we've covered all of this stuff. Oh, there's one more thing. In order to answer the questions on the fun sheet, you're going to need to read this article. You have two options. You can either just open up this Word file that I made from this website right here, or you can go just straight to the website. It doesn't matter to me. It's all the same stuff. So you will need to read this in order to answer the questions on the fun sheet, okay? So you don't have to print it. You just have to read it. So that's that. Hopefully I've said everything I need to say. I'm running out of time again. So let me say goodbye to you, and I'll see you guys the next time we get together, which doesn't, I don't have any information on that right now. Sorry. All right, bye guys.